they said chill, the day the earth stood still, 'cause we'll all be fine in the end. We've been home in our pad, feeling kinda sad. We just want to see all our friends. There may be no school, and there are so many rules, so many things to comprehend. But restrictions are lifting, and the threat of COVID shifting. Getting ready's here to ease your mind.
Real people with real voices telling very real stories. Brought to you by Getting Ready for Life. So welcome once again to She Doesn't Even Go here as we head towards, well, this is week 3 and we've got a full board this afternoon. Let's go around the board and say hello again to Amanda, who's an academic coach, life coach. She's just an amazing person. She's also very famous. Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Hi, Greg. Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, look, absolutely. It's a pleasure, as it always is, with from VU, the clinical psychologist known as Dr. Glen Hosking. How are you, buddy?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. Hello, everyone.
You're looking lovely. That haircut is stylish, my friend. That is a stylish
Cheers, I do my best.
You do. You put me to shame, actually, to be honest with you. Peter records from Braybrook College, one of our esteemed learned teachers. Welcome, Pete. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Looking forward to it.
It's very exciting, and you and I both share the earphone kind of dilemma, don't we? Damir from Youth Services in Brimbank, who's a very old he's not a very old I'm a very old comrade, but we've known each other for a long time. We had a joke about getting him on, and he wasn't going to join us, but he is now. Hello, Damir. How are you?
Good, Greg, yourself. And you're right, I am very old.
No, you're not. You're a rock star, mate. How are you? Good?
Good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, good as gold. Georgie is joining us there. Hello, Georgie. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Now, you're VCE?
VCE, yeah.
VCE. So we're going to have a chat with you in a moment. We've got Aiden down there. We've got Nathan down there. Give us a wave, boys.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Look at that. A couple of good-looking roosters. And we've got Calvin, who
Yes, hello.
got a busted camera.
Welcome,
How are you, Calvin, bro?
I'm good. Cheers.
I want to go to the students, first of all, with the news creeping through during the week, because we put this show together in the first place to try and bring our school communities together, because you're all socially isolated at the moment. But, Georgie, I'll go to you first. How did you greet the news this week that the doors will be reopening to students in the next couple of weeks?
It's been a little bit weird. My dad's actually a teacher at my school, and my school is from years 9 until 12. But he only teaches year 9s and 10s, and obviously they're going back a little bit later. So there was kind of that moment of, will dad be going to school? Won't dad be going to school? So that was a little bit weird, but he is going to be going. And then I actually had a Zoom call with my home group this morning, where my teacher told us that basically students are not expected to socially distance, but teachers are. Which is a little bit weird.
It is a little bit weird, isn't it? Let's go to the boys quickly. So we've got Calvin, Nathan, and Aiden. I'll ask you first of all. School's out, but you're about to return. How's that feel for you? Because a lot of the young people we've had so far on She Doesn't Even Go here have talked about the fact that at first this was like a great holiday, but now that you're starting to really get edgy about going back to school. How do you feel?
Honestly, I would say I'm looking forward to going back to school because all this online schooling, it's it's hard to find motivation to do work, and I feel like in a classroom I'll be more suited to be able to.
Yeah, it's not easy to work when you're in your jammies with a bowl of cocoa pops. Nathan, what about you? How are you tracking in terms of getting back on track and seeing your mates again?
Yeah, I can't wait because I just want to get in contact with with my friends in person, not online, and I just want to become get into it with them, just do more work with them.
I get you. Aiden, same for you?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to get back because I haven't really been doing anything besides staying on the computer and typing away or whatever. And yeah, just want to get back.
How's the online learning been? Have you had a real crack at it? How do you feel?
Yeah, it's all right, but it's not really motivating. I'd rather be at school and because I have a lot of distractions at home. I'm in front of a computer playing games majority of the time because that's like all I can do. Not allowed to go anywhere else.
It's really odd, this one, isn't it? Because Damir and I had a chat about this during the week. Before I defer to the great man from Brimbank City Council, I want to ask you, Peter, how about this? You've got a cluster of students and they're all keen to get back to school.
Look,
It's unheard of.
Look, I'll tell you what, Greg, I'm not at all surprised at what the students have said, because earlier today when I was thinking about the type of questions that you might ask or what comments I would make, the first thing I write down was the word motivation. And I've found it incredibly hard to gauge the kids' motivational levels. Okay, online, other than giving the kids work and gauging what work they do and monitoring their attendance, I can't do much else. I find it it's been a real challenge just to gauge their motivation levels. And funnily enough, when the news broke earlier this week, I asked my kids the very next day how they felt. And most of the kids were so happy to get back to the classroom.
Damir, we had a chat during the week. This is very distracting because I've got background noise here that I wish I didn't have, and it's totally my fault. I do apologise. Damir, we talked during the week about that, about how difficult it is for young people to stay engaged when they're trying to work from home and there's so many distractions, as everybody's pointed out. And I know you and I discussed the dangers of young people, really disengaging from their studies and their education. And I know you, in terms of youth services, have been talking about trying to ensure that the young people that fall through the system that decide not to go back, that we can look after their interests as well.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, we work particularly with a few services within Brimbank that are dealing with young people that are probably either on the cusp of disengagement or disengaging, and it has been a challenge for those young people and their families on lots of levels, from navigating IT, computers and Wi-Fi at home. Some of the parents just aren't in that world, and having large families, having only one device for 4 or 5 young people in the family. So it has been a real challenge. Whereas we heard the other side, whereas some people have really enjoyed it. But I think for those young people that were kind of on the cusp of probably becoming disengaged, it probably hasn't helped that probably the last couple of months. But on the other side, I was chatting to a stakeholder a couple of days ago. He was just saying there was a young person that was on the cusp of becoming disengaged from school. He was feeling anxious, and he was saying he was being bullied. He's loved online learning because he hasn't had to deal with those issues in the school environment. So that's just one example, but that was quite interesting. I think at the end of the day, what we're sort of getting from most of our young people, even those that are struggling at home, they want to be back at school because they just don't have the capacity and the environment's not the right environment to be learning from home for those young people.
Dr. Glen, I'll go to you. That socialisation, that that bonding, pack mentality. That's not a silly thing to say, pack mentality, but that bonding just with other human beings and with their peer group. That's so important to these guys, and that has been, I think, a common theme in everything we've spoken about on She Doesn't Even Go Here over the last few weeks.
Look, it really is. And I think that one of the real themes that has come from a lot of the stories that we've heard along here, along this program, has been that people have found it very difficult to motivate themselves as a result of doing things in isolation. But also people have been missing their friends, and people have been adjusting to everything being online, for them being in isolation, for them being in lockdown. And that in itself is also quite demotivating. And so if we sort of add, we've got adolescents dealing with the stress of senior secondary school, they're suddenly thrown into this environment where they've got to be learning from home remotely without their friends. They're trying to adjust. There's a lot of challenges that comes with all of that.
Amanda, I'll go to you now, if I may. It does prove one thing, doesn't it? The whole one-size-fits-all mentality is really well, it's redundant when it comes to teaching young people adequately, because some respond to something, and you would know that very, very well. What's your thoughts on the return to school now? I mean, the social bonding is going to be great. Peter will be thrilled because they'll have full classrooms for a little while anyway. But the one size fits all, it doesn't, does it?
No, not at all. And in my experience with the students that I guess I'm working with, there's a real mix in terms of going back to school. There's a lot of trepidation in quite a few of the students. Again, like Peter and as well, I've been having conversations in the past week since this all got announced. And so most of them are generally looking forward to going back. And obviously they want to see their friends, being number one. But at the same time, there's lots of things that they're, concerned about. And even one of my students said to me last night, she said, I've got concerns. I said, well, what are those? She said, oh, I like the fact that I can sleep in longer and, some of these other things that she's been doing at home. And she said, oh, they're not really valid thoughts. And I said, no, they're valid thoughts to you. And we need to recognise that all these kids are going to, some more than others, are going to have these challenges going back to school. And some of my students are on the spectrum, and we're going to have some real battles. And today I've had conversations with several schools about how we're going to support them, and particularly put extra transition days back in, if you like, and treat it a bit like the start of the school year. And I just literally sent out my newsletter before I popped online now, and I have got in there tips for parents about having conversations with their children about going back to school and making it as normal as possible. So there's lots of different things, and I think it won't be as easy as you said, a one-size-fits-all for everybody.
Georgie, if I may ask you, VCE year, how has this impacted you psychologically? You're probably fortunate you have a parent that is also a teacher, but just that unknowing, that sense of, because no Year 12 students have ever experienced what you have experienced this year. It's quite there's a lot of pressure on you anyway. And then all of a sudden the added pressure of missing a couple of months of school. How do you feel now about your VCE, which is seen as something so terribly, terribly important?
I think it's definitely, there's a lot more pressure at the moment because, all of our teachers are saying, yeah, your SACs are going to be spaced out, like you're not going to have more than 2 or 3 a week, but we're all going, but that's 2 or 3 a week for several weeks. And I know my school's a select entry school, so a lot of kids are very academically oriented. We have a lot of our own motivation, but we're still really, really struggling with applying ourselves and studying when we're in this online environment.
Peter, should the young people that are returning to school, that are in Year 11, Year 12, the VCAL students, etc., who are all going back to what is going to be their final year at secondary school, should they be concerned about what's occurred, or should they just chill a bit because we're going to get them through?
Yeah, great question. Great question, Greg. Look, I think Amanda alluded to normality and what's normal. I think as human beings, we've got this ability to adapt to our circumstances. I really, admire the kids, most of the kids, and how they have handled this social isolation and remote learning. And I think once we get back to some normality, things will start to fall into place a lot better for our students. At first, there might be a little bit of a steep learning curve. And look, what Georgie says is really on the mark. When we first ventured into this remote learning, one thing that sort of happened, I don't know how, but the workload increased exponentially. So us teachers were dumping piles of work on kids, right? And my understanding was that most of the kids weren't coping with this excessive demand. So something similar may transpire when kids return, but over the course of maybe a week or two, I think things will settle back to normality and we'll be able to cope much better than what we initially think we might.
You're watching She Doesn't Even Go Here, which will be a redundant title in a couple of weeks because they will be back and going there. But in the meantime, we'll write it for all it's worth. I want to go to the boys. Calvin, you still with us?
Yeah, of course. I'm right.
He's a good man, Calvin. He's got a lovely, deep, resonating voice, even though he's invisible. Calvin, I'll ask you first, has this whole experience given you a new appreciation of school? Because, I mean, when you're in year 11, year 12, I don't know about everybody else here, but I couldn't wait to get away from school. I didn't mind having
Yeah,
a
for
off
sure.
here and there. But do you appreciate it more now?
Yeah, for sure. Like before all of this, like quarantine and all that, like class time, I would just take it for granted, you know, like just do my work, go home, take my homework. But like after like being away from school for so long, like you start to appreciate like what you missed out on and all the little things that actually mattered, like face-to-face learning especially.
It's a really interesting one because I don't know, again, if it's the common experience for the adults here on the panel, but certainly from my point of view, I didn't appreciate school till I was exited and I was 6 months out of school and thinking, gee, that was pretty cruisy time. Nathan, is it the same for you now that you've had this time off, you've missed your mates, you've missed your social interaction, are you thinking, hang on, school's not that darn bad?
I mean, school is an exception, but I do not mind remote learning too. It's just, the mates, I just kind of miss them a lot. It's just I'm handling like online learning really well, and I don't know about like any other people. It's just me. I'm just handling it really well at the moment, and I don't know. I noticed that some people are not like what do you call it? Some people are not like in my class. Like some people are what is the word? Like falling behind with remote learning.
Struggling.
And it's just, it might be because like family or like distractions at home, but I just find a way to like just stop that and then just go through my work.
Look at you, old Cruisy. He's a double threat. He can do it at school and he can do it remotely. What about you, Aiden? What's your thoughts when the whole lockdown thing happened? How did you feel then, as opposed to now that you've had this big gap and you know you're going back? Have your thoughts changed?
When we started quarantine, I was kind of excited about it. Like, got to stay home, do nothing, basically, just stay in bed, sleep in. But now I'm starting to realize that like school is actually like a nice place because that's where all your mates are and stuff. And you're not going to have that opportunity next year because you're going to be moving on with life. You're going to start getting a job. You're going to start working long hours, and you're not going to have your friends with you all the time. So it makes me like appreciate like the little things that you do at school.
That's an interesting one, isn't it, Amanda, that they're getting an early or a premature life experience that we've all gone through where you know, oh, mate, I remember the relief when I left school and I thought, I don't have to come back to this place. And 6 months later, I was clawing at the gates and crying and asking them to take me back. It's a funny old world.
Yeah, look, one of the positives I've been talking to a lot of my Year 12 students about in particular is, and even younger students, whilst this has been the experience it has for you guys, this online learning stuff, something that I guess a lot of people haven't really thought about, and you wouldn't because it's not in your horizon at the moment, but it's setting them up for university, particularly if they're going to go on to do extra studies, because they will have to function, be self-motivated, they will have to, you know, manage their own time, they will probably do some of it online. You know, it's a very different experience. So that I think in some ways that's the real positive that will come out of this for these guys when they get to that time in their lives.
Nathan's obviously rocking it. He can do it at school. He can do it at home. But what are we setting up for, particularly the young men? And I don't want to genderise it, but a lot of young men, the opportunities, particularly in our region, in the Brimbank region, and also the Maribyrnong region, young men are limited in terms of their opportunities on leaving school, the job opportunities, etc. What are we setting up for young people that don't? Will not re-engage at this point because of the break?
No, I think it's something that I think all of us are considering, or as the time comes back for whatever the new normal will be, and then we go back to our normal ways, is probably what I was saying before. It's just with families and young people that had pressures on them before, this is another significant pressure. And, you know, not to be a doomsday merchant, but we know the job opportunities we had very high youth unemployment rates in Brimbank prior to COVID-19, so likelihood of them being higher up post COVID-19 are highly likely. So I think, again, yeah, for young people that will be going on to further tertiary education, I think that, you know, I think the benefits are well articulated. And I was also thinking the world of, you know, some of the conversations that we were having over the last couple of months was that this was an opportunity for people to experience working from home. So I think, as Amanda was saying, it's been the positive of that is for young people, and some young people might go into occupations post high school where they actually do work from home. And we know that some young people have 2 or 3 jobs on the go at the moment, and they work from home and they really enjoy that. But I think, yeah, just for that other group, it is going to be very challenging. We're sort of, again, seeing all the economic sort of indicators that it's going to be a tough time, but we just don't know. I'm a firm believer, I think, of Amanda and Peter, and I think all of us in resilience of young people and being adaptable and being able to adapt. And I think it's not just something that I say tokenistically. I firmly believe that the young people in our country will adapt, and the world will be different. They have gone through something, and I think you were saying we've gone through something as a collective, which is really interesting, that parents and families and young people have gone through something that's been quite terrible together. That's very rare. So I think the understanding from parents and the broader community in regards to the struggles that young people might be having post-school and getting work or getting casualised work, I think that greater understanding might actually, and empathy might actually be a really good thing, in a sense that people might give opportunities where maybe in the past they didn't, in regards to employment opportunities.
It has been a great equaliser, Dr. Glen. We've talked about this a couple of times, but just probably for the first time in my memory anyway, where something that potentially is quite catastrophic in some manifestations, the parents and the grandparents and the young people, we've all shared something that was completely unknown to all of us. So you don't have that situation where dad will stand up and say, well, you know, back in the war I used to, because nobody knows this territory at all, do they? So it's a lovely shared experience for everyone.
Look, I think that there's a lot of real merit in that this kind of experiences, you know, can be bonding. And if we look at experiences kind of through history, and one of the reasons perhaps that we've heard, you know, perhaps grandparents or great-grandparents talking about, you know, wartime is because of that sense of collective bonding that kind of can often occur through those challenging sort of times. And I think that, you know, what we're seeing a lot of now is that because households are working from home and schooling from home, that kids are getting a better appreciation of what their parents do at work. You know, parents are getting a good appreciation of what each other does at work. Parents are getting a better appreciation about what their kids are doing at school. And that can be a really healthy, helpful thing.
That's an interesting one. Invisible Calvin, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, I love it. Isn't it got a lovely sort of baritone sort of resonance to it? You've got a voiceover job waiting for you, Calvin. I'm telling you, right? Buddy. Hey, listen,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Well, I'm telling you, I should know. I used to make a quid out of this rubbish. You're watching, what are you watching? She doesn't even go here or listening to it. Calvin, tell me just quickly around to all the students. I'll go with Calvin first because he's invisible. We don't know when he's just going to disappear completely. Is your relationship with your family changed as a result of the lockdown?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been talking to my parents like way more because like now that you're not at school all the time, like you have more time to talk to your parents. And like most of the time they're not home, but now that I'm at home during school hours, so like I can see them often.
That's an interesting experience. What about you, Nathan? Just getting to know your family a little bit more.
Yes. Since that work for them has stopped, like we've bonded like quite a bit. So, we have like sports at the back, so we have like table tennis and like basketball, and we can just like bond. Yeah, we've been bonding a lot these past few weeks.
That's a huge positive, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Same for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I've been bonding with my sister a lot more, just talking to her and helping her with homework if she needs any help. And yeah, talking to my parents a lot more.
That's a wonderful positive. Georgie, I'll take, you mentioned your dad, I'll bring that into the conversation again, but Did you share that sense of nervousness about what was happening around you? Because your dad was home and you were home, and all of a sudden your future's uncertain in so many ways. Was that a common experience that you talked about?
A little bit, but I feel like I more spoke about it with my mum. My mum works part-time, so she's able to be accessible a lot more of the time. But she does work in healthcare, so she does have to go and work at the hospital some days. So obviously she's not home all of the time. But I was just going to mention, I have a twin brother who actually goes to a different school. So I think a big benefit from the quarantine has been I've spoken to him a lot more than I normally would have, and we are a lot closer, and I really appreciate that.
Wow, so that has been a fantastic theme too, hasn't it, Dr. Glen, where we've heard a lot of young people say that they've just grown to know their family and actually enjoy their company, which is pretty cool, I reckon.
Yeah, it is cool. I think that, familiarity grows as a result of spending a lot more time with each other. There can also be, let's be frank, higher instances of conflict, and it can also be challenging. But everything that everyone's saying around, that there are also healthy elements of it.
Yeah, there are. Look, I think initially that there was a suggestion that may be the issue, Amanda, that families would actually find themselves more and more conflicted, if you will, but quite the opposite.
Yeah, look, in most of my experience with the families, I guess, that I've been working with, and even in my own, it's all been relatively, normal and positive, and along the lines of what all the students have just said. I know I've even been going for walks with my children more, and having conversations and finding that time. But for some other families, there are definitely some real challenges out there, and I've got one family in particular who's 3 members out of the 4 have got mental health issues. And as you can imagine, all being in the same house for the length of period of time and other things, there's been a lot of challenges come out of that. And I have seen that with some other students too. So, again, it's not a one size fits all, going back to your comment before, really.
This is an interesting time. I'll go to you, Peter, because you've got to sort of man the barricades at school once again. I think everybody would, the suggestion is you're all looking forward to it. What's your message, though, to students that perhaps really have started to disengage mentally from their studies? And, because there's a lot of young people on the cusp, and they get this opportunity to kind of drop out, if you will, and tune out. What do you say to students that are thinking about, maybe I'll go back, maybe I'll take the easy option?
Look, I honestly believe, school is a safe haven for most kids. It's an opportunity to, socialise, learn, make something of your day that's useful, that's meaningful. I would say to the kids returning to school in a couple of weeks, it's an opportunity to reconnect. It really is, to reconnect with a vibrant community, which is what schools are.
And you'll be teaching with your usual vibrance and passion.
I'm really excited. Look, I've got some students who have become disengaged somewhat. I've got some fantastic students who were, the most wonderful kids in the classroom who have really.
Peter's is he with us? What's happening there? He's been.
Hello.
Oh, I thought you'd been Calvin for a minute. You were just disappearing.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. So
I'm having some technical.
You clearly are. He's having some technical. Let's just lighten it up a little bit. Invisible Calvin, the one thing, because I've put on about 20 kilos since the lockdown. I've just been, no, I really have. I'm working hard on my paunch here. What's been the comfort food since you've been home? What have you been gorging on?
Mom's cooking, actually. She's been cooking a lot more now, actually, and it's been really good.
What's her specialty? What's the one you love the most?
Probably her pho or her Vietnamese soup.
All right, I'll be round to grab some. Nathan, what about you? What when you go to the cupboard or the fridge, what are you grabbing the most of?
since Coles is right next to my house, it's really accessible. So I'd go for my brothers to like buy ingredients. We make burgers a lot. We take turns in cooking. So
Okay. So you
yeah,
make
so my mom and dad can like just enjoy our food.
You're a beauty. You're a
Do
ripper.
home delivery?
Yes.
Do delivery.
You might even have a business to open up next year.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Aiden, what about you?
Recently, mum's been making more food as well, and she's starting to like make other foods. She started to bake as well, so she's been making bread here and there.
Holy moly.
Yeah, she's just trying new stuff, like watching stuff on YouTube and making random stuff, I guess.
Oh, is anybody of you look, I don't know. Am I just one out here, Georgie? 2-minute noodles. 2-minute noodles.
That's been a bit of a thing, but like Aiden's mum, my mum's been making bread. And so like most days about 10:30, go out there, get a slice with some butter.
Wow.
Bread and butter.
Is it conceivable, Damir, is it conceivable that socially that this thing, because we've got parents and young people bonding, we've got parents that are making the bread and everything else. Is it possible that this could, perhaps we should just stay in lockdown? Is this a positive here?
It is really interesting, isn't it? And I think everyone with what isolation has given us all is a good time to reflect. And I think the longer we go into this period, and I think now we can see some light at the end of the tunnel, I think the general consensus is it should be a balance. You know, that incident that young person that I spoke about that was anxious and getting bullied at school, and him actually liking, him re-engaging online, I think it's like Amanda says, it's just often, there's something for everyone, and that's maybe the way forward for schooling, in that a young person could be linked to school, maybe potentially online for a period. But I think all of us agree that being in a school environment, being social with others is still the end outcome. And so I think, yes, I still think that balance, and I think even parents are saying, I love my family, but this is just driving me crazy at the moment, because it is very hard. The longer that this goes in, I think people have called it the honeymoon period, and it's well and truly over for some families. The only other thing that I was going to say, it's quite interesting that I think the food discussion about food is really interesting. I was on a Youth Affairs Council of Victoria Zoom catch-up. They'd have a fortnightly catch-up, and we were on a session yesterday. It's quite interesting now, as rightly so, there's a lot of focus on mental health of the broader community, but also our young people in regards to, the impacts of COVID-19 and isolation, and how people have responded during, and how they will be post the isolation. And one of the interesting things that a speaker was talking about was the physical health of young people as well. As we know, a lot of they go hand in hand. So at the moment, what this person was saying was, we're sort of forgetting that about our young people, and it's more about being online, being indoors, not being active. But we also, I think it should be remembered that we need to be active. We need to everyone's quite active now during COVID-19, but will that continue afterwards? And as we all know, the health and well-being of not just young people, all of us, it is a real balance between, exercise, to give you a break while you're studying, to stimulate yourself, to give you a rest, to recuperate, all that kind of stuff. But it is quite interesting. And I think that discussion, once we all have time to breathe a little bit after COVID-19, should raise a little bit more, I think, as a bit of a stimulus for us to talk about that.
Well, can I just say something about that, Greg? That I think that everything that Damir says is really important. I think that there are some wonderful things that have come out of this, and I suppose like any kind of situation, there are positives and also there are challenges. But it is what we do know at the moment is that rates of anxiety are much higher than what they otherwise would be. We do know that rates of mood problems, depression, and so on and so forth are much higher than what they otherwise would be. I mean, this is a challenging time for a lot of people, and all of the stuff that Damir mentioned in terms of there are risk factors, and certainly isolation is a risk factor. And there are also, you know, for students that are, for example, being bullied, or perhaps they're particularly shy, or they get really anxious in school-based kind of situations, that this can provide an opportunity for avoidance, which might seem like a good idea, but actually it's quite counterproductive in the long term, because it creates an even greater fear moving forward.
You're watching She Doesn't Even Go Here, episode 3. And just to answer your question, Damir, about what we're doing after COVID, isn't that when you and I are starting to do our drive time radio program that we're talking about?
You'll have the rate of accidents will increase as people are driving home.
Listening to the style of music that you love, it probably will, my friend. Amanda, that was cruel. Amanda, just got to ask you, what's the message from schools this week?
As in what they're saying, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because you've got a lovely, broader, you know, knowledge base of all the schools that you work with. Again,
The teachers, I guess, that I've touched base with this week in particular, number one is the wellbeing and mental health still, you know, and I think that's really the focus I think I'm seeing and hearing in terms of getting our young people back to school and being engaged and so forth. And I think what we'll see, I mean, particularly I guess here in Victoria, Year 12s will probably be obviously going back for about 5 weeks or 6 weeks of this term, but the other ones will only be younger ones will be only going back for a couple of weeks. And I think the plan is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but I think the plan will be very much about just getting them going back to school, getting them back into normality, routine, not stressing too much about the work, even though Georgie's talking about the sacks and, you know, and so forth. And then they get a break. They have a holiday, and then we refocus for term 3.
Yep.
So I know we're coming up toward half time on She Doesn't Even Go Here, episode 3. But before we do that, I want to just quickly go around the table, and I'll start with our learned teacher, Peter. Now, just like the students at your school, you're socially isolated from all your colleagues at work. Who do you miss the most? Who are you going to give a big old hug to? Well, you can't hug. Who's your staff member that you're missing the most? Come on.
Now, you would have some idea. You would know. My 2 best friends.
Yes.
Mr. Lecaude.
Yes.
And Miss Petrides.
Look, 2 excellent choices.
We're like...
Yeah, no. You're all great human beings, and you do a great job, and good luck when the students... return. Calvin, are you still there, or have you?
Yes, been listening.
So just talk to me for a minute. It's a beautiful voice. It's a beautiful voice. Calvin, tell me, of all the people at school, all your cohorts, who are you missing the most? Who are you giving a shout out to? Who are you going to get to school and think, I'm glad I'm back?
Like students included?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, for sure, my mates are for sure. No one else.
Go on, name a couple of them.
We've got Aiden here, we've got Nathan here, we've got Jason. No, we got Jaden, we got Hi. All that.
Sounds like a boy band happening. Good on you, Nathan. Who are you missing? Who can't you wait to see when school returns?
Oh yeah, my mates for sure. Yeah, what Calvin said. But there's this one teacher that I really miss, which is Mr. Spiteri. He gives me like life lessons in class, and it really helps me think about life.
Now that is an awe moment. That's beautiful. Well said, Nathan. You're a jet, mate.
Yeah, that's why I really like it.
Aiden, what about you?
Yeah, probably the same as Calvin. Just all the mates.
It's a really important part of it. Georgie, I'll ask you. You're staying with us, aren't you? Though after half time, are you or not?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, that would be a plus. I'll ask you that after the break. We're going to take a little break. Who's dropping off? Peter, you're going. Calvin, Nathan, and Aiden are all leaving us, I believe. I've got a list here, but I can't read it because my eyes are terrible in this lighting, which is just intrusive. I feel like my irises have been burned. Thank you, Pete, and thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And we will see. I'll probably see most of you in term 3 up at school.
I've brought up a picture of Calvin if you guys are keen to see what he looks like.
Not a bad one.
I've got your school photo, Calvin.
Oh, the latest one or what?
Yeah.
Show him that.
Do you want to share?
Yeah.
Show
I'm
'em?
Ladies and gentlemen, the big reveal.
Okay. All right, here we go. Here we go.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the legendary baritone Oops.
Oh, it looks different
Hang
than
on.
what
No,
I
here he is.
Alrighty.
Don't know what's going.
Here he is.
Is that Calvin?
Can you see Calvin?
Ah, look at that.
There you go.
Oh,
I tell you what, that wasn't worth waiting for, Cal. Thanks very much. All right, we're going to take a little break on She Doesn't Even Go Here. We'll be back for the second half very shortly.
Yeah, hello. I was just in my room, catching up on the latest episode of She Doesn't Even Go Here, brought to you by Getting Ready for Life. And I heard someone break into my house. Yeah, there's someone in here with me. Yeah, no. Oh, he's coming in the door now. He's coming in. Oh. Alright, cool. Yeah, no. I know who this guy is. Yeah, I can deal with him. Yeah, cool. Yeah, say hi to the kids for me. Alright, see you later. Bye.
So a very warm welcome back to the second half of episode 3 of She Doesn't Even Go Here, in the week that it was announced that schools are partially going back, and it probably, you suspect, if it goes well, it's going to be full steam ahead for the rest of the year very, very shortly. Amanda, we were just having a chat during the halftime break, and I know there's some, don't forget to look at us on the book of the Facebook page, is it? Yeah, and on YouTube as well. We'll be up on YouTube, and you get to see all these gorgeous faces, well, to eternity. It stays there, doesn't it, on YouTube? So that means what we're doing now will be recorded for all time, which is pretty scary. Particularly if the aliens are picking this up, they'll just be looking. Anyway, She Doesn't Even Go Here. Amanda, I know that was a terrible segue, but you did want to talk about.
Oh, look, what I was saying in the break was, I think it's really important for, I guess, schools and education in general to really reflect on, I guess, the positives that have come out of this with the online learning and the way kids, are engaged and so forth. And I think it's an opportunity to make changes to our education system, which hasn't seen changes forever. So I think one of the biggest things that I see regularly with a lot of my students is, why am I doing this subject? Why do I have to do this? What relevance has this got to life? Those sort of comments all the time. And you can't disagree with these kids half the time. And basically my message is, well, just do the best you can and get through it because you have to. But I think we need to look beyond that, really.
No, and that's a really good point. I don't know. French, I could never work out why I was learning French. And also tin mining in Malaysia was something I struggled with contextualizing. Georgie, Amanda's point about mixing up how you learn and the context of what you're learning, is that important? Is that something that needs to be addressed?
I think a lot of, especially at year 12 level, a lot of the subjects we end up choosing are as prerequisites. And one thing I've really struggled with, I'm hoping to get into medicine, and one thing I've struggled to understand is I'm required to do maths and chemistry, but I'm not required to do biology, which kind of seemed like a given to me that you should know biology to be a doctor. I'm taking biology anyway, but it just, like, I think they do need to have like a really, really long look at, I guess, the disconnect between high school and university.
Wow, that's a really telling point. I don't know about you, Damir, but if I'm getting brain surgery done, for example, which I probably need desperately, I'd probably want my surgeon to have some rudimentary idea of where my brain is and how to carve it up or whatever they do. Don't laugh. I'm serious. I want my doctor to know what they're doing. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. And I think the point, as we discussed probably in the first half, was just that reflection about, school and life. And I think it is a really good point. Because if we don't make use of what we've learned over this last couple of months, and it has been a bit of a waste of time. And I think there's some really interesting things coming out of it. and again, we all know that there's young people that will go on, like Georgie, to tertiary education, which is fine, but there's also a lot of young people that won't. So the relevance of, again, what Amanda was saying, the relevance of information. I can't distinctly remember, this is going way back when I was working in Western Australia, and it'd be interesting to see what Georgie thinks of this, and it's a shame that the boys have gone. I always remember when a couple of the young boys would get expelled from school for whatever. Guess where they were when they were expelled from school at lunchtimes, hanging outside the front of the school. So I think there is that belief that, well, I firmly believe most young people want to be at school for varied reasons. Some of those that disengage aren't. Lots of varied reasons for that. So, but I think making things relevant, like Georgie was saying and Amanda saying, that young people, there's a reason they completely understand why they're there, why the relevance of what they're studying to maybe. Not everyone knows or is as focused as Georgie and some of our Year 12 students about their next few years. There's quite a lot of young people, and probably like Greg and myself, we still don't know what we want to be when we grow up. But I think it's that case of really looking back and reflecting, like Amanda's saying, if someone's on the cusp of disengaging and they're studying units that they really have no understanding of what relevance that has to what they're going to be doing, or they don't really know what they're going to be doing, just gives another reason for them to disengage. Whereas I think if we make units and make school content, course content relevant to young people, that would be great. I don't know, it's not as simplistic as that, but I think that's what we're kind of striving for. We want as many young people as we can to get as much schooling as they can, in a sense, in relation to what they want to be or what they want to do in the next few years of their lives post-school.
It is an interesting one because, I mean, I've worked in schools for a deal of time now. A number of potential, for example, young men that aspire to be in a trade, as plumbing, etc., but not understanding, for example, the relevance of maths to, measuring jobs, giving quotes, paying salaries, whatever it might be, because they're never given the context of what they're learning. Dr. Glen, you've grown up to be a sensational-looking clinical psychologist with a highly esteemed position, but a fairly tenuous relationship with your cat. I know that.
I don't have a cat.
Well,
so it is tenuous.
I'm projecting because I've got two cats, and the only thing I've learned is one of them hates me and one of them loves me. We've bonded at that level. But when you were at school, did you have subject matter that even when you were learning it or attending classes where you just thought, I just don't understand why I'm here?
Yeah, look, I think that when you consider the breadth of content that you do at school, and look, really, like, lots of people when they go into, if they do go into tertiary education, might do a general degree, just start with the idea that they might focus it a little bit later, and even in those situations think, I don't know why I'm kind of doing this. I mean, for me, maths was never something that I certainly enjoyed, and I certainly struggled with it. And I think that it's reasonably common kind of experience, and probably at this time when people are perhaps studying subject matter that they don't necessarily identify or identify with. When they're studying in isolation and having to drive a lot of that themselves, it's probably increasing the challenge of it.
I was force-fed Pythagoras' theorem when I was at high school as it was then, and I can promise you in my rich and eclectic life, I've never used it once for anything. Georgie, what is something that you've been in class and you've looked at it even now with the perspective of a young person, and you know yourself that you are never going to apply this to anything in your life?
I think I'm a bit of a nerd, so I enjoy all of the subjects that I'm doing right now, but kind of looking back, I really didn't enjoy music and drama. Like, I'm quite the singer. I'm in a lot of like choirs and things like that, but I didn't enjoy learning to play the drums and things like that because I'm never going to use it again. It's not something I'm interested in.
Unless we ask you to join our boy band. Amanda, did you have any subject matter that you, even at that point in your life, you knew was never going to be applicable?
Probably similar, I guess, to what Georgie's saying there was around music. Maybe I was never going to be someone that was really interested in music. But then I look back at something that was really useful that we did, and I mean, this is going to sound archaic to someone like Georgie, but we learnt to type on a typewriter. Now, at the time, who would have thought? But that was probably the best skill that I have come out of secondary school with, because I can touch type and I don't even have to look at the screen, the keyboard. And so many students now who do type and have to use devices don't know how to do it. So it's those life skills that I think we could learn a little bit more of in school that would help these kids ultimately for life.
What I would love to hear from you, Amanda, is you're a student organiser, as you said, and you do a great job. Your reputation precedes you, and the age presents you as a very learned person. But what do you advise young people who are studying and finding themselves disengaging from subject matter because they really don't feel it's relevant to their lives or anything else? How do you counsel them on that? How do you support them in that?
Yeah, look, a couple of different scenarios there. I had a Year 10 student just yesterday talk to me about her subjects for Year 11 and 12. Now, she pretty well thought what she'd chosen this year was going to set her on her path. She is hating physics and she's not liking French anymore. And now she's really struggling to work out, well, what should she do instead? So we just had a little bit of a chat about it. I talked to her about talking to the careers person at school. We'll pick up the conversation again, in due course as well. But the other one for the younger kids, often what I say to them is, generally by about Year 10, 11, and obviously in 12, for Georgie, you are generally doing subjects that you are interested in. And you've just got to get to that point so you can do that. So that's what I was saying earlier, how you have to just persevere and just do the best. A lot of kids have to do religion, for instance, and they've got absolutely no interest in it whatsoever. But, just do the work, get by, and then you can move on.
Yeah.
Not enjoying French, sacre bleu. Just quickly, before we knock it off, because we ate up quite a deal of time with our first session today. First of all, I've got to remember this week, thanks to Ralph and Paige and Erin and Robbie and all the other people that have given up their time to put together She Doesn't Even Go Here. I didn't acknowledge them last week, and it was really disrespectful, because the people that are putting the effort into bringing this to fruition are just an amazing group of people. I want to go around. We've already done your comfort food, but let's go to the adults. Damir, where have you, when you head towards the fridge or the what's the thing they store food in? The food storage cupboard.
Pantry.
That's the one. That's fine. It's been a shush. During the lockdown, where have you been heading towards? The chocolates or what's your comfort food?
I have two dogs. The dog's kibbles. No.
Me too.
No, I'm really as you know, Greg, a very simple person. Just very simple food. Fish fingers I've been craving for of late.
Oh, yes.
It's very simple, under the grill. I don't know. So, and I usually live by myself with the two dogs, so it's throw in the whole pack of fish fingers. Lasts a good couple of days, Greg.
Hey, has the relationship with the dogs been affected? Have you learned more about them, or are they about you since you've been locked down?
It is really interesting, because I've got a Kelpie cross and a Staffy cross, and they're both very active breeds. So, but they don't get the sleep when I'm home. So they give you that look on the couch where you're kind of patting them or kind of giving them too much affection, and they're just kind of like, "Will you go do something? Can you leave the house?" So I think so they're seeking counselling support at the moment.
So presumably they're up at Brimbank Council looking for services to help them out. I know we've done it before, but let's do it for a bit of fun. Amanda, where have you been heading to in the pantry?
Probably for me, it was chocolate, because it was Easter, so there was eggs and stuff around, and I don't mind the odd glass of wine here and there.
It doesn't have to be an odd, it can be even. I don't mind. Wind them up. What about you, Dr. Glen Hosking?
Yeah, look, I'm probably similar to Amanda. Once the Easter eggs got exhausted, I had a birthday over Easter and got a case of wine, which I've been slowly working my way through, and that's certainly been good. I'm not necessarily all in moderation.
I just want to point out, Georgie, we are not role models at this particular point.
That's why I say moderation.
Disregard the last 5 minutes. Georgie, good luck with your studies and your VCE year, and good luck to your family as well. You seem like an amazing young person. We've been very blessed over the last couple of weeks to meet an array of young people. I'll say what I say every darn week. I don't meet young people that I don't like. I think you're all terrific. I think you all have potential. So go hard and be great, Georgie. Did you just speak, or was it a silent?
I said thank you.
Oh, no, I wasn't sure whether I was going deaf. They just, my age, your senses just start to disappear. Damir, hey, listen, you are a smiling, gorgeous man. I know we talk a little bit off air, but you're a great guy and you do great work at Brimbank City Council. And I look forward to the day that we can aimlessly talk about crappy music out on the footpath once again. Thanks for being involved.
No problems. Thanks for having us, Greg. Nice meeting you all.
You too.
Dr. Glen, with his new stylish, sleek, aerodynamic hairstyle.
Yes.
You're looking good, man.
Cheers.
You're going to be with us next week?
Sure thing. Dr.
Glen Hosking from VU, and of course Amanda, student organiser, who's just been very revealing with her wine and chocolate diet. That's terrific. You're just great, aren't you?
Thank you for having me as well, and I hope, again, wish Georgie all the best, and just do the best you can. That's really, all you can do, and not stress about the things that you can't control.
One of the great or two great things that have come out of doing this program with terrific people, terrific young people, is that the positive message. Young people are looking forward to getting back to school. Young people are bonding with their families. I feel very, very fortunate to be part of this. You are watching and have been watching, and stay watching, because we'll have another episode next week. She doesn't even go here. Look for us on Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Gettin Ready for Life. All right, ringing the bell. That's a school bell, by the way. I'm getting ready. Are you getting ready? We're all getting ready. We're all getting ready.
For life.
Brought to you by Getting Ready for Life.
Stop smiling! Stop laughing!